And
I love to record this because I know that there's going to be a number of people that are going to want to hear what you all have to say. Um, I'm thrilled. So, Jane and Cliff, I was at IHI and I picked up that. What? Yeah,
woohoo.
yeah. Apparently, it sold out at IHI, which was pretty wild. We'll do a few quick little intros. Good to see you, Christy. And
Yeah, thank
I
you.
just
Good to
sent
see you
Christy.
too. Thanks for
It
the
just
invite.
sent It just said her the invite last night. So, Christy, this is a group just to give you a heads up. And I'm not sure I know Andy. I don't know. Maybe we've met. I can't remember. But Christy, this is a group that I put together to of people from my past and connected with people throughout the journeys and travels, and also uh, individuals who I've met since, who are what I would consider thought leaders in improvement science. We get together every 6 weeks or so with those who are able to. This is the first time we've done it this early in the day. Most of the time, it's later in the day. I'm trying something new, so we'll see how many people are able to make it. Uh, and it's just a quick check-in, and if there's a particular topic that people want to share, uh, they do. Deborah Smith has talked about her books, both at Skip, which is a Stanford group, and then this group. She's written what are you up to? 6 books now, Deborah, or maybe more? Six?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Uh,
prolific.
Thank you.
yeah.
Awesome.
Got a new one coming out, women, Christian women leaders. So
Oh,
I'm hoping it gets out before Christmas.
oh yeah.
So good.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is
Thank,
Yeah.
awesome.
thank you.
Deborah's an inspiration for sure. And then Cliff and Jane just put out a new book. This book, I just showed it, The Quality as an Organizational Strategy.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they're going to talk about their book today. But it's not always, sometimes it's just we just connect and check in and see how everyone's doing. So similar to the email you sent me, Christy, a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think that would be I would still like to do that other one too. So anyway,
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, I saw it last night. I was like, see what I can do.
yeah, I'm so glad you're here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Christy, do you know everyone? Do you want to
I
introduce yourself?
No,
Maybe?
I don't.
Okay.
So my name's Christy Zuber. Ryan and I know each other from work at Kaiser Permanente in our past, and now we're both at Stanford Healthcare. I split my time between Stanford Healthcare and a company I run called Aspen Labs, which does human-centered innovation work, a lot in the health equity space. And yeah, that's me. I'm a nurse by background, but my kind of area of research and focus has been bringing human-centered design into large, complex healthcare systems primarily.
Mm.
Yeah.
You've been receiving lots of accolades from what I see. I mean, all over the
Yeah,
place.
it's been
Getting
really
awards.
fun lately. It's been sort of weird. I'm not typically one that like throws my hat in the ring for sort of awards or honors or whatever. I'm the one that's like, what's the next thing to take on, but actually I think that's one of the lovely benefits of Stanford is they're always like, no, put in for this, put in for this. I'm like, okay, okay.
Yeah.
And so it's been a bit of a surreal, yeah, there's been several different awards come in for some work, and I just got inducted as a fellow into the American Academy of Nursing. That was a big thing. So yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
been
it's a
cool.
big deal.
Thank you.
Big deal. Yeah, it's really neat.
The main thing is I got to wear lots of really fancy dresses in the last
I
six.
know, I saw. I was like, wow, it's red carpet. I mean, I felt like it
I
was a carpet.
know. I felt
Yeah.
very Hollywood.
So good. So good.
Yeah, how about the
So
rest of you? I'd love to meet you
yeah,
guys.
why don't we go around and introduce? So everyone, I mean, I think everyone knows me, but let's go to Deborah and then Jane and then Cliff and then Andy, if you would.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Deborah, and I live here in Colorado. I
Me
had the
too.
pleasure. You do? What part?
Yeah, I'm in Greenwood Village, just south of Denver.
Oh, I know exactly where you are. I'm in
Yeah.
Pueblo West. We used to live up in the Denver area, so we're neighbors.
Yes, nice. That's
Nice,
awesome.
nice to meet you, Christy.
Nice to meet you too.
Are you, you say you're working at Stanford as well as your own company?
Yes, that's right. I split my time half and half.
Okay, well, good. And are you working with Dale Beatty?
I do. Yeah, so the department that I'm in is kind of shifted around a little bit, but I in the Office of Patient Care Research. And it's now that group is now also a part of the group that does all the kind of professional education and development for nurses and magnet track and things like that. So it's now one group together.
Nice to meet a neighbor.
Thank you.
So, I'll tell you just a little bit about me. I'm an independent consultant. And in the last few years, I've been writing books with my colleague, Andy, that you see here on the screen. Andy and I worked together at GE, and we've continued to work together through the years. And I'm currently working with a company up in Alaska and be going up there about 1 week a month. And Andy and I are working together on that account. So
Ah,
it's fun. We love our work, love what we're doing, and just thankful to give back.
nice. Oh, that's great. What's your primary area of focus, Deborah?
I do the performance and sciences, but I do a lot of leadership coaching and strategy development, strategy and operational planning, balanced scorecards, things like that.
Thank you.
Deborah was a mentor at Kaiser,
Mhm.
Southern California,
Ah.
for several years. So I think there was some crossover at time, but
Probably.
Christy led the innovation consultancy, if you remember that group.
Okay.
Deborah. Yeah,
We had the
so-
Innovation Consulting, the Garfield Center, and
right, the Garfield
Innovation
Center.
Advanced Technology Group. There are a lot of us sort of
Yep.
an
Yeah,
amalgamation.
good
Linda
time.
Fahey's who we worked with a lot in Southern Cal.
Oh, well, good. I covered Colorado, Georgia, and the Mid-Atlantic states.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
And then was at California several times with the big training sessions we'd have. So,
Oh nice. Do you know Jack Cochran?
yes, I know Jeff.
I just had breakfast with him yesterday morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's doing great.
Oh, good. It's nice to see everybody on this beautiful morning.
Yes.
Well, let
So
me
let's,
follow up. This is Andy Ganti. I have known Deborah, as she mentioned, for over 30 years. We worked at GE, and then we continued to associate with each other for one thing or the other, including writing books together. Plus, we work on several projects and publish, several articles from time to time. So I am a management engineer by background. And then I live in San Francisco Bay Area, San Ramon, California. Then my specialty is to work with process improvement type of projects to leverage the technology applications so that the process improvement can be aided by the technology also. The most recent addition to that is application of AI to it. So anyway, that's just a summary of my interest and my area of expertise.
Nice. Thank you, Andy.
Okay.
Well, I'm Jane Norman. That other guy over there is my brother. That's a lie. He's my husband. We've been working, let me just say, I've been in industry since 75, think how old I am. And we crossed over about 2001, but in 1995, I was an executive at ConAgra, and I was introduced to quality as a business strategy. That's what QoS used to be. And because healthcare doesn't consider themselves always a business, an organization is a better title. So I think that's why Lloyd and them decided to do that. But I've been the person who's actually been doing that in the businesses. So I was at ConAgra, I was at a distribution, I was at Epic EHR installation site for the at Ocean, which is for the, not for the large hospitals, but for small clinics and things. Then we, in 2001, we were encouraged to work. We were working with HP worldwide for about 10 years, Compaq and HP. And about 2001, we were enticed to get into healthcare. And people say, oh, are you a doctor? Are you a nurse? No, I have an engineering background and natural science, physics, math, all that good stuff.
My favorite part is she was accepted at Juilliard for opera. And she
But chose Caterpillar
sings
instead.
sings in 7 different languages. So when we're in Europe or anything, I'll have her get up and do some Puccini. And we were at an Italian restaurant and the guy come running out. He said, where'd you learn how to do that? I said, well, in Texas, if you can't do that by the 2nd grade, they'll throw you out of school.
Exactly. There you go. I love that.
But
And thank you for bringing that up because I'm not sure if Jane would have mentioned that part, and that's fascinating.
so, but I had been doing, I was introduced, I was actually a training manager of 2 plants at Caterpillar, and we were using SPC and pre-control in the old days and trying to get away from that. And we have had, I've worked with, I think over 1,000 teams for improvement in different industries. And so many of the examples that are in the book, they come out of my stuff.
Yeah.
But what I would say is the use of quality as a business strategy, once you figure that out and learn what those components are, I can't go back as an executive unless I have somebody who actually works with me. So that meant in 2001, we started our own company. So we had 2 companies at that time. And one is called Profound Knowledge Products, now Profound Knowledge Partners, also known as, and Cliff is on the API side. And we're both independent, but API is not an organization. It's a bunch of people who work together and publish together. But they're not an organization. They're not a business at all. So our group, the PKP, which, you know, Profound Knowledge, where did that come from? Deming, obviously. And that became the our vehicle. Originally, we started in e-learning at that time. Think about 2009. And we were doing the e-learning for HP, and then we went into, I translated it for Sweden because that's when they were starting to get, and we were working with Sweden for about 5 years. And then we've worked all over, including Singapore, Canada. We've been everywhere, all over Europe, India, Australia. Now that we're both 72, so we're kind of semi-retired. We kind of do what we want to do.
Yeah, it's a perfect place to be in.
Yeah, and what's nice about that is, and we've got all these books that we've got lined up. Well, we need to do this one, and we have the stuff. It's just that we have to transfer it into the self-publishing realm, which is really nice now.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, after doing this for 40 some odd years, I started looking from the software standpoint, how to make, my theme has always been how to make it easy to do the right thing, hard to do the wrong thing. And trying to transfer it so it makes it easy for people to do improvement, because they do weird things with PDSAs. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah.
And they don't know how to do a charter, and then they go on forever and they never know how to close it out. And then anytime you have a successful project, it actually moves to project management. And then those people are different. And I can remember being in HP and we had improvement advisors coming in and somebody says, well, I just went through project management. Why didn't they just integrate this into one course? Yes, thank you. And then from the healthcare side, we have risk assessment. And so you have enterprise risk management, which is really like strategic management, if you will, and looking at it as a whole. And then the risk assessment when there's an adverse event. So you have to have the FMEA and the root cause analysis. Well, we took the root cause analysis and we've taken all of those components and created a software platform. And it's all integrated. We call it Traxio, and then it allows you to do the a custom tracking as well and integrate and upload files and have everything in one place. Isn't that the problem you have? Let's see, somebody worked on this project a year ago. Where is all their documentation? We can't find it. They're either gone, they're in a different thing, they don't know where it is. So it's all and it also the analytics from the healthcare data guide, because Lloyd is obviously a partner. We did all of the charts in the healthcare data guide, including the exponential chart. We were using the exponential chart during COVID.
I just gotta add to what Jane's saying right here, because our programmer down in Australia, he's amazing. But when Jane and I were working with Indian Health Service, we'd go onto a reservation and we'd say, you bring your PCs, and then they looked at us and they said, okay, we got them here. And they were all brand new in a box. I said, well, there's no Office on this. Oh, you wanted Office on it? And then we ended up teaching them Excel and Word and PowerPoint and all this stuff. I mean, we didn't get to quality. We were too busy with the tools, that everybody else has.
Yeah, but if you don't have that, all the rest of the stuff's going to be really hard to do.
And
So anyway, our programmer down in Australia, he said, I'm gonna take that all off, Cliff. I said, what do you mean you're gonna take it off? He said, I'm gonna fix it so they can do a shoe heart chart without having to do Excel. So really, and he did. I mean, you go over there, you pick the thing, and it asks you questions. You say, draw a chart, and that's it. We're all done.
there's no formulas. It makes it so that you spend your time analyzing what you have. And it even marks the special causes and tells you what they are. And
The people,
the API, the synthesized special causes. So it makes it easy to do the right thing. And the hardest part is coaching them on what chart. But we've even in the training said, if you don't know, you're going to be in the ballpark. Go ahead and try this chart to start with, and then as you learn, you'll use the other charts. But that, and then we turned it into the accelerated model for improvement, because we were getting projects through in 3 months, and but the other components weren't there. So we took everything we learned from doing that, and Indian Health Service was my proving ground for that, because they obviously had low computer skills. And now we have the whole thing as with the training modules in it, which I never had before. And the e-learning is available if they want it, but it's all integrated, and it's done by site, accredited site, and not by user, which I just had somebody tell me, oh my gosh, we were looking at this thing and it looks like it's cheap, but oh my gosh, once you start putting the users on, it's so expensive. So, but anyway, so I've always said I'm more the practitioner. But helping to have something, the improvement and being able to watch people really grow. And I think all of you are like that. They grow, I call it the bucket. They have a bucket over their head. And as you're doing a project, the light comes out and you go, oh my gosh, this is somebody who's going to be really good. And then other people that you think are going to be great, they're kind of like, they are not risk takers. They don't have the personality, can't recover when there's a failure. And PDSAs are just, the scientific method with the addition of X. So because of that, you have to realize that you're going to fail 25 to 50% of the time, it's okay. We learned something. Be happy about it. And it's like, oh, but anyway, so that's that. And I've gone on too long. So Cliff, you're next.
No, I love it.
So I was privileged to be a partner with and still a partner with API Associates in Process Improvement. And there was when I was hired at Halliburton, the fellow that hired me at Halliburton in Dallas, he went on down to Crosby, Philip Crosby Associates, which was anathema to the Deming group. Anyway, he gets down there and he says, Cliff, well, will you come down here and help us out? And so I told Lloyd about it, and he said, well, I said, I'll send a note to Deming. So Deming wrote a note back and he said, I'm wishing Cliff Norman great success on bringing statistical thinking to the great unwashed.
Yeah.
And so I went down there for
Go ahead.
2 years, and then I got, like I told Jane, it was like being called up to the Yankees, so being able to go with Lloyd Provost and
Yeah.
Dr. Tom Nolan, Jerry Langley, Kevin Nolan, it was a whole different level of learning for me and development. And so as part of that, we've written several books together now. More importantly, the Improvement Guide, which has served us well. And this book was in an unpublished form for many years. And as Jane just said, she was a vice president at Conagra, vice president at Conrad Company. And she would, when she would introduce herself, she'd say, well, my husband and his partners, they write books, but some of us actually have to do something about it. And so I had her, she's on this book with Dr. Michael Maccabee.
Oh, nice.
Who
You're bringing her in. Would that be called bring her into the dark side? I'm not sure, but
who Deming chose to teach him about psychology. And so in about 2011, I was writing something on people skills or something, and I was getting ready to go into where Maccabee, he had actually criticized Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and he gave pretty good reasons why it wasn't useful. And so I did a search real quick, and I ended up finding out he was alive. So I called him on the phone, and Lloyd, about 20 years before that, screwed me up. He said, Cliff, what do you know about people skills? I said, well, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Lloyd said, no, there's this guy, Maccabee, just debunked all that. So for 20 years, I knew him as Maccabee, right? So I get on the phone and he answers it. He says, this is Dr. Maccabee. And I was like a brain freeze,
Oh, no.
How am I going to say Maccabee when I've been trained to say Maccabee, for 20 years. So anyway, we've been fortunate
Oh, that's
to
good.
hang around some really smart people that truly, as Newton would say, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. And unfortunately, we're
For
losing
real.
some of them. We've lost Dr. Tom Nolan and Ron Moen. Ron Moen was helped Dr. Deming with 88 of his 4-day seminars. I was only in 10 of those. Lloyd was probably in 20 or 30, and it was an amazing journey.
What a brain trust.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And then Jane and I both worked with Dr. Duran. I had him at Halliburton, escorted him around for 4 days, went to dinner with him every night, woke up, had breakfast with him. But I mean, just an amazing journey. And, Crosby, every time he'd get a letter from Deming, he'd call me up to his office and he'd say, Cliff, will you read this letter and tell me what he's saying?
Oh my gosh.
So anyway,
Cliff, did you ever happen to know any people in the finance area in Halliburton? My father worked there for a long time, James Dining.
no, I haven't done.
He was corporate
I
controller.
was there from 79 to 86.
Yeah, you guys definitely would have been there at the same time, but he was he was
I was
corporate controller, so
in
he was all in the finance space.
I was in a division called Otis Engineering, which
Oh,
was
yeah.
in Carrollton, Texas.
Yeah.
So that's where I was based out of. And so that's how
Yeah.
I got involved with this. Dr. Deming came on and did that thing on the NBC white paper, if Japan can, why can't we? And so our CEO, Purvis Thrash, he saw it. And I was working relative in quality. And So I got tapped on the shoulder, says, why don't you take our R&D manager and go see this old man and see what he's got to say, you know? And so that was in 82, February of 82. I got the book behind me. That was what was called Japanese Methods for Quality Control. That was the name of the 4-day course originally. And so it
That's
was,
great. I've heard that the story about it many times, but not any of the personal details around it.
well, there's a friend of mine, James, his name's Jim Bowden. He was at General Motors, and Ron Moen, Tom Nolan, and Lloyd Provost worked with Jim quite a bit there. And they always had Dr. Deming. And in fact, Ron Moen, the first time I met him, he had me follow Dr. Deming around for a couple of days while he was consulting at Pontiac. And one of our friends asked Jim Bowden, he says, well, how many of these 4-day seminars have you been to? And he said, oh, about 10. And he said, he asked him, he said, well, are they all the same? He said, oh, yeah. He said, but I'm different every time. And the first time I met Jim, he asked me a question. We were in Valley Forge going through Mid-State Brick. And he said, Cliff, how did you feel about the day you found out you didn't know anything about business or anything else? I said, you're talking about the 4-day, aren't you? And he said, yeah. And that's just the way it hit you. I mean, you were just like, I was,
Oh, I functioned.
oh, I was 29 years old when I met him, and I was a quality engineer. And I thought, this old man's up there telling me well, it actually was in an elevator. He grabbed me in the elevator because he saw my badge, which said, George Washington University on it. He walks up to me and he says, Mr. Norman, what I'm getting ready to tell you this week will haunt you for the rest of your life. And the second thing he told me was, as young as you are, if you're working for somebody and you're not learning from them, you ought to think about getting another boss. Well, I went back to Halliburton the following Monday. I went up and saw the vice president of engineering. I told him what he told me. And I said, I'd like to work for you. And then he says, well, what's wrong with old Bill? And I said, well, maybe if you don't know, then I've chosen improperly. I need to go back and find me another VP to talk to. I'll put a transfer for you next Monday, Cliff. And it suddenly dawned on me that this is not a prison, And
Yeah.
and anyways, then we brought Duran in, and we brought Lloyd in, and then Lloyd, basically at that point became a mentor for me, by 83, I think 83 or 84. And so we've been working together ever since. And I think you're down there with him now. Is that right, Ryan?
Yeah. Well, with Lloyd, yeah, he teaches at our advanced course, and yeah, we're in connection. But I wouldn't say I'm with him. That would be pretty amazing. But no, I'm in communication with him, certainly. Yeah.
Hey, Cliff, this is Andy. When you were at Halliburton, did you have a chance to run into former Vice President Dick Cheney?
He came on right when I left. And in fact, there's a really good story about that. There was a VP of sales, I couldn't stand him. And the guy just would get up and mouth off. And I just thought, God, why can't he just shut up? And so apparently he did that with Dick Cheney when he took over. And Dick Cheney leaned over and they called security in, and they just escorted him out of the room and fired him on the spot. And everybody else that was left in the room were wondering what happened. And Dick Cheney looked at him and he says, look, guys, I've been lied to by experts, and you're not that. So let's not do this anymore, or you'll be joining him. They took him down and cleaned out his desk and just ran him right out of the thing. I said, wow, whatever you want to say about Dick, he saw through that guy where nobody else has seen.
That's fascinating.
And I mean, like 2 minutes. I mean, I had several friends on the executive committee, so I heard one after the other. Oh, you'll be happy. What happened today, Cliff? It looked like Al Capone hitting the guy with a ball bat, Anyway, Andy, that's my only connection with when Dick Cheney took over. I was there when I can't think of his name, started with a C, but he was the CEO of Halliburton. And of course, my CEO was Purvis Thrash at Otis Engineering.
That's what brought us when I grew up mostly in Duncan, Oklahoma, because that was the corporate headquarters
yeah.
of Halliburton for a long time. So during the early 80s, when you're talking about, my family got transferred to Scotland for some of the North Sea stuff. And then we came back, and then my father went to I was in college by this point. He went to Arlington and then Houston. So
Wow.
that's where, yeah.
So Christy, they took me up there on a tour. It was like an onboarding.
Oh yeah, it was the
Let's-
entire town. It was crazy.
Let's teach you about this culture. And I won't tell you everything they told me because a lot of it was expletively deleted. But they told me flat out, don't lie on your expense report. Don't inflate it at all. And then they told me about Earl P. Halliburton.
Oh yeah. That was the name of our park and our football
I mean,
stadium.
yeah, I mean, the guy that was leading me around had been there for like 40 years. And it was like an enculturation because
Oh yeah.
and I tell my colleagues don't believe me when I tell them this. I say, there's stated values on your little purpose, but then there's unstated values. And those
100%.
unstated values come to you by way of don't do this, be careful with that,
Oh
And
yeah.
this guy just really prepared me like there was no tomorrow. And then I hate to go on, but it's so funny since you mentioned it. When I came from Los Angeles, because I was raised in LA,
Yeah.
I went to work and I was about ready to make a presentation to the executive committee. And we had a lady there who was the secretary to our vice president that I was working for. Her name was Gloria Berry. She said, Cliff, let me see what you're going to present. So I had it all in notebooks. And Gloria looks at me and she says, would you like to get out of here alive today? And I said, yes, ma'am. And she let me help you. So she took everything out of the notebooks, put it in manila folders. And I said, why'd you do that? She said, if they see you with that notebook, they'll wonder what else you're wasting money on. I said, you got to be kidding me, Gloria. She said, no. So let me go through what you've written here. And I said, I needed some forklift equipment. She said, let me rework that for you. She said, we need material handling equipment. I said, why are you changing that? She said, well, we bought a forklift factory and we haven't been using it. So if you say you're going to go buy a forklift, you're going to get killed. And I go in there. Sure enough, this guy, my colleague, he shows up with these notebooks and they just beat him to death,
Is that
I'm like,
crazy?
and then one of them had an order for a forklift and they beat him to death. And I'm going, wow. So I made my presentation. A week later, I was promoted to manager. All because of Gloria.
Great job, Gloria.
Oh my God. And and she and I hit it right off because I was raised in Los Angeles. She graduated from UCLA class in 1939.
Wow.
I mean, just think about.
Oh, what that would have been like.
Yeah. I mean, it was an amazing experience,
Wow.
Just-
That's incredible. Yeah, I think my father was, I don't remember how long, but I'm going to say 35 years, probably 40 years, something like that.
Yeah.
It was the bulk of his career was there.
I got,
Hey,
when I
Cliff,
got promoted to manager, when I got promoted to manager, they moved me in with the VP and they just moved him from Scotland. Bill Daring, you may know him, but
Oh, that name, I do know that name.
oh yeah, because he was in charge of Scotland for like 30 years and then they repaid.
Okay.
And the next thing you know, I'm working for him and he's a vice president. He's never been one before. So we're sitting there in this office. He's got a desk, looks like an aircraft carrier. And he looks over at me, says, well, what are we supposed to be doing here, Cliff? I said, well, I understand there's a plan book. He said, a what? No, you're nuts. He said, we don't have a plan book. I've never seen a plan book the whole time I've been in Halliburton. I said, no, there's one. And he said, really? He said, have you seen it? I said, no. So he calls Gloria in, right? That Gloria,
Who knows everything?
yeah, and she comes in and she says, Cliff said there's a plan book. I said, yeah, that's correct. And he says, why am I feel like I'm here at Green Acres and there's a talking pig and I never knew about this? I mean, I'm dating myself there, but that's what Bill said. So she goes down to see Purvis Thrash and ask him for the plan book. And she comes back about 20 minutes and she said, and she's laughing hysterically. She says, Mr. Thrash is down on his hands and knees going through his credenza trying to find the plan book. And Bill looks at me, he says, well, all right, Smarty, now what do we do? I said, Bill, up to this point, this company's been driven by sales. I said, it's about ready to be driven by manufacturing because he who has the plan runs the meeting. And from that day forward, we did. I mean, the salespeople jump up, hey, babe, we need to have you get on New Iberia, do all this stuff. I said, wait a minute here, sign this capital for me, Al. Well, I'm not signing that. I said, why not? You just told me to get down there and build a plant for you. Sign it. Well, it might not work out. I said, oh, so let me tell you how the game's run before this. And Mr. Thrash is sitting there. Oh, go down there and build me a plant. We get down there and build you a plant. And then you jump up in the following year and say, why did you guys waste all that money on that stuff? So we're not going to do that. We got
Oh
a
my
plan.
gosh.
So just sign this capital for me and we'll go do that. So it was I hate to take up all this time on Halliburton. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
this is so fascinating.
This
though.
is you and Christie's fault, not mine. So
Brian's like, why did I invite her?
No, no, it's wonderful. No, these stories are so fascinating. Cliff, I do want to make sure you get to the book so you can talk about the book a little bit before we're done. And I would like to share that piece of the recording with the bigger group so that they can hear from you about just what are some of the things you're really excited about this book, and what do you want us to know? I mean, I haven't read it yet, and I suspect it's similar to QBS, but
I got about 12 midnight. I saw the thing, and then I saw you wanted me to talk about that. So I got up and I put together too many slides to talk about it, which is typical API. And so I could show it. I can show the book cover and a table of contents if that'd be useful. And then
sure.
talk for a little bit and answer that question. I think that's an important question. So if I hit share down here.
It's sharing.
Good.
Yeah. It's starting to share anyway.
There it goes.
So
Yeah, we see it.
And of course, Lloyd and I have worked together for a long time. Dave Williams is a new addition. And he's actually working on an application of quality as an organizational strategy in Wales right now. But he's kind of where Jane and I were about 30 years ago in the development and the use of the ideas here. So this has been a learning curve, in writing the book with him, because he's got questions that we're going to hear from people who are actually reading the book, for the very first time. And so that's been a really great partnership to have that part of it. But as Jane just said, almost everything in here, we've been developing since 1993. And that actually goes back further than that. And she was actually applying most of these ideas as we were developing them within API. So she's a vice president at Conagra, and she's actually working on these ideas and making that happen. But the book is divided up into 4 parts. And the first part gets into the basic foundation. Lloyd's chapter 1, you could literally take that chapter and you could teach a week on that one chapter. It's amazing. So it goes into the introduction and all the rest of it. The second part of is what Ryan, when he talked about improvement science, the science of improvement is what we call chapter 2, what Dr. Deming called profound knowledge. And the idea of understanding variation, understanding systems, psychology, and theory of knowledge. And that's where Maccabee really helped us out, because we were fundamentally ignorant on the psychology piece of it. And so was Deming. Deming would do his 4-day seminar and he'd get waylaid into targets and start talking about intrinsic, extrinsic motivation, but that's as far as he would go. So chapter 3 has a lot of Maccabee in it, based on our experience of working with him for about 10 years. He became like a father figure to Jane and I. I mean, he was truly an amazing man. He when he graduated from Harvard, Robert F. Kennedy approached him and wanted him to join the Kennedy administration, which he didn't like the Kennedy's father, so he refused. And then he and his wife, newly married, went to Mexico and worked with Dr. Eric Fromm in Cuernavaca. They wrote their first book there,
For 10 years.
yeah, for 10 years. And his daughter Nora was born there. In fact, she's returned down there now. And amazing man, amazing experience. He's a degreed psychologist from Harvard as well as a cultural anthropologist. So not only does he understand the individual in a deep way, but he understands the group and the interaction between the two. So it was a tour de force of learning for Jane and I. So chapter 3 has his ideas of strategic intelligence in there, as well as the foundations from Dr. Deming, that what we learned about leadership. The part 2 is really focused on the methods of QoS, which came right off of Dr. Deming's production viewed as a system. So when Lloyd and Ron Moen and myself and everybody else was in there with Dr. Deming, people would come up to us and they'd say, you know, we don't know what to do. He's given us all the theory. In fact, one person raised their hand and asked Dr. Deming, said, we don't have any methods here. And then Dr. Deming said, oh, I gave you the theory. If I have to give you your methods, you might as well send me your check, you know. So for him, that was for us to do those methods. And so chapter 4 is on purpose of the organization. 5 is the huge transformation, and what makes all this different and ties everything together is switching from viewing the organization as an org chart to actually how do we work together as a system. And as when we started working with the CEO and Young Shipping, Jane and I went over there and we developed a systems map with Jorn Henriks, you guys may know him, and Mats Bostigs. In fact, Mats Bostigs' daughter was our exchange student for about 9 months and lived with us here in Texas. But the CEO there, he got up in front of a group of people that were saying how complicated the systems map is. And he said, absolutely. He said, it takes work to do that. And he says, I don't see how are you going to lead a system if you can't see it? How do you do that? And that's when they told us the story about Esther, an 83-year-old woman they almost killed because they left her out in the hallway and she was dehydrating. And he said, IHI told me to do 62 projects by next Tuesday. And he said, I need something to help me understand what's going on over here and how is that going to impact what's going on over here, you know? And so Jane and I were called over to help them with the systems map. And we were there several times. And then Mats Bostigs, Dr. Bostig, he actually took over and really started developing the idea within Young Shipping. And I asked him, I said, you know, most people can't do this. So Mats, can you tell me how you're He said, yeah, Cliff, I'm an endocrinologist by training. So systems make all the sense in the world to me, you know? And I thought, wow. I mean, I just one of the few people I've learned in, you know, we teach and then just go out and do it. So it's amazing. Chapter 6 is understanding the measures of the system. Chapter 7 is you have to get intelligence in to the system. Otherwise, you're in trouble. Like, you know, when we go to war, the first thing we do is we knock out the intelligence of the enemy and their capabilities. In industry, they just eviscerate themselves. And so, you know, it's Dr. Deming said he went to Japan and he was talking to them, and he was 50 CEOs there, and he said, well, he says, do you ever get complaints? And they said, yeah. And they said, well, what do you do with those? Well, we sent them a geisha calendar. He said, well, how many geisha calendars have you sent out? You know? And when I was working with Conagra and Jane up in Arkansas, I had the same conversation. I asked him, I said, well, do you have any data on complaints? No. I said, well, what do you do when you get a complaint? Well, we send them a cookbook. I said, well, how many cookbooks have you sent out? You know? Exactly the same conversation. But anyways, chapter 7 is all about the methods to learn about the system externally and internally. And then chapter 8 is a milestone. That's where the business plan incorporates the plan to operate and the plan to improve. This is where we switch from, you know, just attacking stuff, you know, get a black belt on that, what Dr. Deming called, you know, a few fires for improvement, as opposed to doing improvement on purpose. So, and I'm using that in the way that is focused on the purpose of the organization, but actually having a portfolio of projects that we have to do in order to accomplish the strategic objectives of the organization. And you can go right to the systems map and you can see where all that happens. So it's pretty amazing. And then the last part, number 9, is chapter 9 is the most important because that's the execution piece. You can do chapters 4 through 8 and not much is going to happen. You know, you'll have some nice artwork to put on the walls and things like that. But until you get to execution, there's nothing happening. And so it's kind of like Einstein says, you know, nothing happens until something moves. And pretty important. Chapter 10.
Cliff, wait a minute, just to interject, Cliff and I, whenever we would work with a new client, we always started with managing the improvement efforts. And I think it comes from being in industry. In industry, when you do something, you have to have an ROI, a return on the investment. Well, I can spend a lot of time on tweaking the purpose and making sure they've got a good value system and working on a system map and doing that. But if they're not getting anything in return, then you have to kind of pay for it as you go. So identifying 2 or 3 huge improvement or things that we've never been able to fix. You know, that's kind of when I went to ConAgra, I was in 9 states and Puerto Rico, and I'd go into a division and I'd say, okay, tell me the things that you haven't been able to fix that are problems. And then when you apply this, we'll fix it. And we did. You know, the methods are so strong that they do that. It gives you credibility on top of it. And then you can do the other things. So I just wanted to
Jane, that's an excellent point. And this goes back, Christy and Andy, to a Halliburton story. But when they sent me to the Deming seminar, came back and I told Purvis what I'd learned. He said, well, Cliff, I've got this $50 million problem on materials. So I want you to launch a project and go fix that. And if you can fix that, then we'll do all the quality improvement you want to do. And so about 4 months later, we went back, got it all fixed, saved $50 million plus. And I was in front of the whole executive team and a whole bunch of managers, whole room full of them. And Purvis, he says, Cliff, I want you to come to the front of the room. And so I go up there and he hands me this card. He said, would you sign this card? I said, what is this, sir? He said, this gives you authority to get $50,000 on your signature. And you just bought us a lot of improvement. So we appreciate it. And one of the vice presidents said, well, you don't allow me to save that much money or sign off that much money. He said, I don't trust you.
You're on a bit of trust with the $50 million
he just got me $50 million, you know. I'm good with this, you know. Yeah, it's just that execution piece is where the model for improvement comes in, and managing a portfolio of projects. This software package that Jane just talked is highlighted in there, because when you're looking at like a number of projects, you're working on 15 or 20 projects, you need to be able to see the status of them and understand where they are and what the issues are. The whole sponsor report idea was developed by us while we were working with Singapore, and you'll see that in there in a big way. And then chapter 10 really gets into engaging people and improvement. And we quote the Gallup survey there that only shows about 15% of the people are engaged in their work. And what we've realized is if you're doing chapters 4 through 8 and you really align people to that. And Jane, while she was at ConAgra and Conrad Company, developed what she called a role statement as opposed to a job description. And in the role statement, it shows the individual's connection to the mission of the organization. It shows their processes, what they own, what they work in. It shows the measures they're responsible for in the system. And so what it becomes, the role statement becomes a passport.
and it shows, wait a minute,
System.
and it also specifically says what their role is in improvement and their obligation to the organization. No job description has that. And the reason that came about was I had a new CEO I was running a distribution company. We had DuPont products, and I was a VP operations, and he wanted job descriptions, and we had worked really hard, and everybody was engaged. Everybody was, we truly redesigned the system. We did an idealized design, and it's actually in this book. And I told him, don't you dare do a job description. I came out of corporate America. I know what those look like. They do not help me with what I've done, and you'll destroy what we've done by just doing that. They'll be focused on a traditional way of, it's not on my job description. I can't do it. No, it says in the improvement section, if you identify something that isn't working or something that could be improved, it's your obligation to communicate that. So those are the types of things, and it pulls it all together so people know how they support the purpose of the organization. It's not a mystery. It's not just your job, and it gets you away from that silo thinking. So
So anyway, that chapter 10 really gets into that role statement idea in a big way. Jane, can you pull up one real quick and just share that with them? I'll come back to that, but I'm gonna just finish up here just real quick. And then part 4 is where Dave's done an excellent job here of the getting started piece. And we have these milestones that you should be achieving. There's like 3 categories of milestones. And when you get to number 18, and that's when the planning process actually incorporates improvements. So the business plan includes not only a plan to operate, but a plan to improve. When somebody gets to that one, I mean, that's pretty well where they've welded this into the system. And if you don't make that, then it's just it'll end up being another drive-by, and some new leader will come in, and then Dr. Deming says you'll get the disease of mobility of management, and that'll all be over with, so you move on. So, in fact, Deming, when he wrote this last book in 94, he died in December of 93, I believe. But he said, what have we accomplished so far? And he said, what we've done is we've been able to improve some figures, processes that give us some figures. He said, we've got about 3% there where we've had some burning fires. But in terms of the overall business strategy, company-wide systems, all the rest of it, most of this stuff is hidden. People can't see it. So he said that's about 97% of the gains where we need to actually make progress there, So.
This is great.
well, sorry,
I think,
go ahead.
Jane, I'm gonna
Oh,
stop.
I'm just gonna,
No, don't. Well,
yeah.
show it, because I've had to transfer all my files to another situation. Finding it is not as hard.
And you can stop me at any time, but this
Yeah.
blew my mind. In 82, when I went to see Deming, I had in my pocket a 105D sampling plan. And that tells you how many samples you need to take in order to accept and reject a lot, right? And Deming gets up and he discusses this. And he says that, inspection, which is here on the left, he said, as you improve quality by driving down defects and problems, costs go up. So quality goes up, but costs go down. He said, that's not what I'm talking about. He said, I'm talking about improving the quality of the system. And if you do that, quality goes up and costs go down. And that's why Jane and I were invited to Sweden, because the CEO there, he told me, he said, this is really funny. He said, Cliff, I report to 83 politicians. I said, my God, how do you get anything done? He said, I've been here 26 years, but he said, I'm real interested in what you told me about Dr. Deming's chain reaction, because every time I need money, I have to put a ballot measure on to get more money for the healthcare system, and our citizens vote for that. I said, really? I said, you don't just go to the federal government and they just give you more cash? I said, that's what ours do. They just throw more money at it. He said, no, we can't do that. And I said, really? He says, yeah. He said, furthermore, he said, have you noticed the guys when they go to IHI? I said, yeah. He said, they always try to get you to buy them dinner and stuff, because when they bring their expenses back, all their expenses are published in the local paper. Man, talk about a change concept. I mean, what if all of a sudden all these people on K Street and the rest of them, we've got to see everywhere all the money's being spent, I mean, that would be just amazing. But this is what he was interested in. He said, I've got to improve the care to my patients, and I need to lower costs while I'm doing it. That's why we're after this. So pretty amazing. As opposed to when Jane and I were working Kaiser, it sounds like somebody who worked there, VP walked up to us and she said, Cliff, I've been here 30 years and this is the first week anybody ever said anything to me about costs.
Yeah.
Can you
Hey,
imagine?
Cliff,
Yeah, that was
I have a question for you, Cliff. What's the title of the book and how many pages are there?
Oh, that's the title of the book is Quality as an Organizational Strategy, Building a System of Improvement. And I'm not really sure on the page count. It's under 400.
Okay.
So
I'm looking right now. It looks like 370 of text, 371.
Yeah.
With
Oh.
some additional notes
So,
after that.
Oh.
But yeah.
so Cliff, I can show an example of a role description.
okay, I'll just do this one thing, Jane, and I'll turn it right back to you. But the reason we chose this is when Dr. Deming introduced this thing to us, and he says you need to focus on quality. Well, when you talk about creating value, quality, we define that as divided by the total cost that you pay for something, which is the price plus the cost to use. And when I was with Dr. Deming at Pontiac, he was talking to a bunch of purchasing agents, and he got up and he says, "How much education in America does it require to be a purchasing agent?" He says, "Let's examine this." He says, "Here's 3 bids, 243, 277, 219. All you have to do is pick out the low one." So in the United States, that probably requires a 5th grade education. He said, "Oh, wait a minute, I may have sold you short. You actually have to figure out how much you saved by getting low bid, so that requires some subtraction, you know, so then maybe an 8th grade education, you know." And then he went on to say, what you need to do is get one good supplier. And the same guy in the front row says, "Well, Dr. Deming, wouldn't 2 or 3 be a good idea?" "Oh, absolutely." He said, "But I said the first job is to get one good one, but that's not what you want to do, is it? You want to just get out 3 and then examine it with this, you know?" So Deming says, if you do that, he said, you'll get the low price, but then you'll suffer the cost to use. You know, pretty powerful idea. So that's why the focus here on quality. And we use we started with the guy at Harvard University. He had 8 dimensions of quality, and to define that numerator, and we've since added 6 more to it. So, well, but that's why the title of the book and the focus and all the rest of it. Jane, I'm gonna stop and you share them a role statement. This has been critical for us because we've had several people that have won the Baldrige Award, but the thing they always got dinged on was the integration of people into the system. And Jane solved that problem. I mean, it's huge, absolutely huge.
So I'm going to show you a first generation, and I'll tell you the difference, what they've integrated, just so you can kind of see it, but you can see it from different levels. This is a customer service representative. So this is her role statement, Holly's role statement. So you see, we had our mission, then how she supports the mission, very short, her primary responsibility, her secondary responsibility. So when she covers for somebody when they're gone, other responsibilities, organizational responsibilities, external relationships. So that's where we learned with some of our people that, like our person who was on the dock, actually had more connections to our customers than many of the other people that you would traditionally think of. The education experience requirement, that is your normal job description. Measures of performance, we've integrated measures of performance with the processes, so now it's a grid you'll see in the book, and improving the physical process, and then their personal improvement. I came out of training, and we believed that if you should be responsible for your own improvement. You know what you need, and to put it in the role statement so that you can go to your supervisor and say, "I need this." And we would tell people, I don't care if you're even taking basket weaving, if you're in an educational situation, you're having to do assignments, you're having to do things and fulfill it and do those types of things. It's important. Now that's that one. And then I have another one here that's, this was our customer service, solid surface specialist, where he actually went out to the customer and took care of problems that were there. And so you see, again, it's all in this thing, but it's clear, and it becomes, it helps the person know how they fit, but they also know, so this area right here and the measures right here have now become a table, the process, and then the measure for it. And then you have to realize that you don't want too many measures, or you can go crazy on measures. So it's the 80-20 rule, which are the most important measures that you need. So I have to keep people, and then you'll notice that the processes and ours denotes the references to the Conrad linkage. At the system map used to be called a linkage of processes, and people just didn't get it. And so I started talking about, it's a map, like the globe, and then the country and the state and the county and your city. There are different levels of detail, so you know how you interact within the whole, and it kind of matches up and goes on up. So, but what's nice about this too is it really helps you. It's got the personal improvement, it's got the qualifications, but it has improving the system and the conduct. I cannot tell you how many times people have said, well, they're not really behaving in the way that our values are. Well, do you have it written anywhere that they're required to do that? In ours, well, model behaviors consistent with the published tenets of our company. When we were with Maccabee in the blue and white book, Transforming Healthcare Leadership, we called them practical values, same thing, the ones that you actually use. So, but that gives you kind of a feel what it kind of looks like. And then you can see specifically how it integrates into what you do. And it's like when we've worked with the government, they have job descriptions that are 10 to 20 pages. This gets it down to 2 pages, and it's like clean and simple, and it says, this is what you're supposed to be doing, you know, and it gets all the cutesy verbiage out and all the HR stuff out, because, you know, but anyway.
It becomes a
Right.
passport. It becomes a passport for the individual, because now they can go wherever they need to in the system, and they don't have to seek permission to go talk to somebody to take care of the patient or the customer. You know, where before, if your whole mental model's those silos, then you got to go up here and get permission to go over here and talk to this one. But if your model is the organization viewed as a system, then I need to talk to these people that I have internal relationships with. I need to talk to these people that I have external relationships, and those are all defined. So they have permission to do what they need to do on a moment's notice. Now, the field guide for this book is coming out after the first of the year. And so this book we referred to as the airport book. So this is to give somebody an idea of what's going on and all the rest of it. Some of our people who reviewed the book, like Bruce Bowles and others, they were they wanted to understand where the applications, the exercises, and all that stuff is. And so we ended up moving it to the field guide, and the lady who
This
was
book was too big.
yeah, I mean, it was like 800 pages when we finished with this thing. And so she said, why don't you move all this over and just create a field guide out of this, and then we'll have the airport book, because airport books aren't 800 pages. You know, those are door stops. And so we took her advice. We divided it up and moved everything, which makes sense, because the people who are going to be building the system, people who are practitioners and the rest of it, they need that level of knowledge. And that's another thing that, you know, Dave was extremely valuable to Lloyd and I, because I mean, we understand all these ideas. We've been dealing with 30 plus years, but when you know, Dave would come in and say, well, what does that actually really mean? And so he was a stickler for making sure that we had definitions and we were using language that other people can understand. So the gift there was enormous in terms of writing the book. So his contributions, to say the least.
Can I interject another thing? What if you really use this? And I've been in I've run 4 companies using quality as an organizational strategy. I can tell you that in many cases, it's liberating because you're not required to go up the silo. So in a smaller company, I've used it in small companies and very, very large companies like Conagra. In the smaller company, we had a person's name on the processes in the system map. And we taught people, and then I've finally figured out how to code it so you know where to find it. Is it a mainstay process? Is it a driver process? Is it a support process? And then by having that, and then in a larger organization with the titles or those types of things go on it so that you know who owns the process. In improvement, that's a really important perspective, because if I'm going to redesign or design a new process, I need to know who has the authority to allow me to make those redesigns. That person becomes a sponsor, that person becomes part of the charter, that person gets communicated when we're doing improvement. It's a whole in a lot of improvement that they don't get. When you've got a map, you can see it. Also, you're looking at being able to go directly to a person rather than up, over, and down to talk to somebody. You can say, I need to talk to this person who does this. And I would have people come to me and they'd go, well, I want to ask that IT person who does all these reports to do that. Do I have permission to talk to them? I go, why are you talking to me? I don't know that process, they do. And if they get in a problem where there is a priority issue, they will come to me and we will talk about that. I see that Deborah has her hand raised.
I just have a couple questions. Thank you so much. And I ordered the book. I can't wait to read it. But I love how you've outlined the role description. Does that cross over to the performance evaluations?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, in our organization, in this particular organization, we had a profit sharing that you had to how you ran your processes, your primary responsibilities and your measures, whether you improved yourself and whether you did an improvement were allowed you to have 100% of the profit sharing. So we incentivize.
There were three
improvement,
buckets you had to achieve in
personal-
order to get the complete incentive.
Right.
Okay.
Self-development, improvement
And
of an improvement of what was the third one, Jane?
the person, the organization, and it's or identifying something and helping,
how you
and
operate.
you don't.
Yeah.
Right. So the what was beautiful about that, somebody came back to me and said, well, that just sounds like you're dictating blah blah blah, and they went crazy on me. And I said, no, actually, because people know what's expected of them, they do it without you having to prod. But I will also put a surgeon's general warning on this, and I'm quite serious because I've been in 4 organizations that have used this and transitioned into it. It identifies those people who do not want to think, who want to be told what to do, and do not want to take the risk, and they don't have the personality that they can manage the risk. It makes them very anxious, and that. So part of the job of the executive or the manager is to identify those jobs that are really more routine and they're just transactional.
I watched Jane suffer with that. So people who are raised in an org chart, they're comfortable. But the minute you put them on the playing field with a playbook and the permission to go do what they need to go do, now all of a sudden accountability becomes very, very apparent. And that's scary.
So we've literally in the 4 companies that I've actually been in, we have helped people transition to a job that is more transactional or leave the company because they were at a level that we needed them to work with us and have exchanges and have exchanges. They just couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it.
My second question, and then I have to knock and get ready for my next call, but so many people work with the Kaplan Norton balanced scorecard. And
Mhm.
quality is not one of the perspectives or pillars that's integrated. And trying to get a company to agree to put quality, safety, and those very important strategies into there has been very difficult. Have you experienced that and had a solution to get them to integrate quality and safety?
So under the
Absolutely.
primary
Chapter
responsibility,
chapter 6 references Kaplan and Norton, first off. So we're well aware of what you're discussing. The adding those dimensions and operationally defining what we mean by quality and safety is a big part of what happens in chapter 6 on measurement. So the question's a great one, Deborah. And it's addressed. Lloyd's done a really good job of that in chapter 6 of marrying the intent of what Kaplan and Norton wants to do versus what we need to do to have the health measures on the system that we're managing here.
and the role description becomes a covert way of doing it as well, frankly. Because you can take it and have the template integrate those things in the measurements and in any of the, improving the system, you can identify, see, we have safety instances or issues in improving the system. So it's integrated that way. It's rather covert if you want to think about it that way.
And I want to
but-
what Deborah just asked, because Jane and I were challenged when we were working with Indian Health Service, we were working with Cherokee Nation, and they'd worked with this consultant for 3 years, and he had 622 measures he had developed. And I said, well, how many improvements have you all made? None. We've been doing these measures. I said, wow. So the CEO looked at me and she said, Cliff, can you get us down to what we need for a family of measures? I said, well, you know that little purpose paragraph you just wrote with 2 sentences? She said, yeah. I said, if you'll give me Jonathan Merrill and John Kruger over here at lunch, we can get you those measures. Really? I said, yeah. So we took each line out of the purpose and then we say, how are we going to measure this? And at the end of lunch, they had 22 measures. She said, well, what am I going to do with the other 600? And I said, well, they can go lower in the system where you need them, if you need them. But these 22 are what you need to focus on. Thank God.
As an executive group.
She said, you're telling me I could have done this. You're telling me I could have done this on day one 3 years ago. I said, yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so sorry I have to leave, but it's just a great conversation and congratulations. And I'm looking forward to reading your book. So thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks for the questions.
Yeah, likewise here.
Yeah, I have one quick question for Cliff. Out of the 6 quality gurus, it appears you interacted with 5 of them, like Crosby, Joanne, at least
Deming.
indirectly with Shower stuff, directly with Deming. How about your impressions about Armand Feigenbaum?
Armand Feigenbaum?
Yeah.
That's a great question. So when Jane and I first started on this journey, there were no books written.
Right.
So there were 2 books written, Total Quality Control by Dr. Ishikawa and Total Quality by Armand Feigenbaum. And then you had Duran's Handbook, which was clearly a doorstop.
Right.
And so if you were a quality engineer, you studied Duran's Handbook, and his trilogy is in there, which IHI thinks is brand new. They just discovered it, but it came out, in the 50s. But, it's like Harry Truman said, usually the only thing that's new is the history you don't know. And so consultants make a living off of that. But the bottom line there is that he was critical initially. I mean, the thinking of these people was dead nuts on. It hadn't been followed through with methods and the rest of it. And that's the challenge that we had when we were working with Dr. Deming and Duran. So each one of them, Andy, they brought different gifts to the party. And, our job is to try to integrate as much of that as we can and stand on the shoulders of those giants. I mean, and I ought to throw Dr. Kano in there too, because we met with the Japanese Union of Scientists and Engineers. Ron Moen led that effort, and we met with him for like 25 years. And the JUSE, Japanese Union of Scientists and Engineers, so we'd meet in Tokyo and different places around the world. And he was instrumental in helping us with what we call the Kano model. You'll see that in the book, and the dimensions of quality and the rest of it. So it's just, we've been very fortunate. As Dr. Deming told us, you need to hang around smart people. And so we
So the last one is Kuru Ishikawa.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
No, you mentioned that, no, because he wrote a book with no,
Guided
Arnold
quality control.
Feigenbaum.
So he had, there was the old man, Ishikawa, that Deming, and I always get the son and the other one mixed. But Deming met with the old man, and as part of his first foray into Japan, he was there to count how many Japanese were left after World War II as part of the census. And Dr. Ishikawa asked him to come over and address those 50 key business leaders in the first meeting in Japan in 1951. And then he was called back, and then he had several trips after that. And by 1957, they had switched over and really got focused on Dr. Duran and Dr. Ishikawa's son. He was a real Duran fan and all that, you know. And so there's a really interesting history that goes along with that. There's a book that Dr. Tusami, I think is how you say his name, but he's written about the history of improvement in Japan, and he goes into great depth about the people that were in charge of Lean, which was at Toyota, and he tells the darker side of that story, and as well as Deming contributions and the rest of it. So I'll stop there. Did I answer the question, Andy? I hope.
Yes, you did. Yeah, because I'm a little bit on the history of the quality side. That's why I get excited about people talking about some of these gurus of quality.
Yeah.
There was one more who was a system thinker. He'd had the EVA, God, it starts with an M. I'm old, I'm forgetting it. He was really, Feigenbaum and
Oh, Sanghi. And then John Sturman. John Sturman at MIT was instrumental in a lot of stuff that we did, but Sanghi first, but then John Sturman, really his book Business Dynamics is a great read. And of course, Dr. Russell Akoff. I mean, you can't talk about systems thinking without talking about Akoff. And so you'll see Akoff mentioned a lot in the book. In fact, the book Corporate Future, it's an old book, but if you read that, you'll really see the influence on Akoff of Wes Churchman, and Akoff and Deming got to be pretty good friends along with McAfee.
Because that, a book by Akoff and Torgerson was, the one that I used in my grad school way back when.
Yeah, I mean, I think Akoff is actually a giant on the system side of things.
Myron Tribus is the other person.
Yes, also of MIT. Yeah.
Yep, he was. Yeah.
But, Akoff never really understood the systems map that Deming introduced in 1950. He always, anytime he'd draw out a system, he'd draw out a flow diagram, Andy.
Yeah.
Which, has a starting and end point, very causal relationship and not, linear. And Deming was smart enough in 1950 to draw out that production viewed as a system idea and show how the organization works as a system. I showed some of our maps to Dr. John Sturman at MIT, and he said, I've never seen anything like that before. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I understand why, because he does those business dynamic things, those loopy diagrams and all that. And unfortunately, a lot of that stuff doesn't work because most systems operate in open systems, and it becomes unpredictable at that point. So that's the problem.
Some of the old terminology, like servo mechanics, it got relabeled as feedback loops nowadays.
Yeah. But, and back to your question again, it's funny. I've been reflecting ever since you asked me that, but each one of them, well, first off, they all had huge egos. That's why they couldn't cooperate with one another, particularly Duran, Deming, and Crosby. And, they always wanted to be perceived as inventing something and in charge of it. And I'm the one that did all this. And so given all that, of course, we're just humans. So naturally, we've all got that problem. But the idea that that we can learn from all of them and stand on those shoulders is just absolutely critical. I don't think there's one answer. I don't think one of them has all the answers. And they've got some really, screwed up things like McAfee and Akoff would get into arguments And Akoff would start talking about democracy in an organization, and McAfee said, "What are you talking about? You know, there's people that have invested money in this and they own this thing. And they don't want other people to vote their money out of office, you know?" And I mean, Akoff was just really into that idea that, you know, everybody needs to have an equal vote and all the rest of it. No, so some of us have money on the table here. And McAfee, you know, he's a pretty liberal guy, but I mean, I was proud of him. I mean, he came out right out and just kind of nailed it down. Well, let's get real here. And unfortunately, you see that kind of stuff. Like, I mean, I won't mention the Stanford professor. He's one of my favorites in the business schools, but he'll start popping off that stuff. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, that's the problem is that I had a CEO tell me, "Cliff, there's a big difference between people who sign the front of a check and those who have only signed the back of a check." He said, "The ones that sign in front of a check, they stay up at night worrying about how they're going to make payroll and all the rest of it. Everybody else is sleeping pretty tight, you know?"
Yeah.
And I thought, wow. And then you hear this stuff, you know, from people who haven't signed the front of a check. They're in business schools teaching. You go, oh my God, this is, well, haven't been there, you know.
Yeah.
Be nice if you spend a night, you know. Anyway.
All right. Well, I've got to. So this has been great. We even went long because I didn't want to stop the conversation. Maybe we could continue this next time. Thank you so much, Cliff and Jane, for coming, sharing your stories. We could listen all day, truly, to it. I have one question for you, Cliff, before I let you go. Is that a UT shirt you got on? You're a A&M guy, right?
Yes.
That
But
doesn't seem like it fits.
my daughter and her husband, he's a PhD astrophysicist, and has a degree, a master's degree in nursing. Both of them went to UT, so I spent a lot of money there. But this is the only dog I have in the fight. And A&M, which I was appointed to the medical school there. And when that happened, my oldest daughter said, "Dad, you can wear the T-shirt now." And because she told me, she said, usually the most fervent fans of any football team of a university are the ones who didn't attend the university, you know. So anyway,
All right. Now that I got that out of the way, yeah.
Ryan, she wanted Texas A&M to beat UT, and I told her, I said, "Chandra, the UT's actually got a chance to be the national championship." I said, "That's why I want to beat them," you know.
So wild, so wild. Well, this has been so much fun. Really enjoyed it. Thank you everyone for joining, and I'll go ahead and I'll clip this out so that we can share it with everyone, so those who couldn't make it could listen to these stories, because it was really fun. So thank you very, very much, and we'll talk next time. Have a wonderful Christmas, New Year's, and the holiday season. So
I want to
Okay.
thank you for the Halliburton Mafia memories.
Thanks,
right.
Ryan.
I'll put that on a clip. Thank you guys. It was fantastic. It was so
Thank you.
lovely meeting all of you guys. And Ryan, thank you so much for opening up your network and bringing me in. I really appreciate it. It's amazing.
Yeah, well,
people.
you're
This is
part of
fantastic.
it now, so you can't get out now. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no escaping now.
No, sorry, you're in.
Thank you all for
All right.
the opportunity to meet some of the new members. I know Ryan from before, but it's a pleasure to
Yeah.
meet the new ones and wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and Happy Holidays.
Absolutely.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
care.
Thanks, guys.
Right.
Bye,
Thanks,
guys.
Ryan.
Bye-bye.